This is the Snarketing Podcast, for marketers, by marketers, talking to marketers with just a touch of snark. Now, here are your hosts, Valerie Vespa and Matt Wurst.
Thank you, Al, for that warm, very personable intro. Clearly,
We love you.
You're mastering humanity. And for the fact that you are an AI named Al is not lost on me. But Valerie, let's get into AI in a second because I feel like it's unavoidable. Thank you for coming back for episode 2 to our to our listeners, but also to you, Valerie. This would have been this would have been a lot less fun without you.
Thanks. Both me and the audience.
But we should apologize for my shitty audio in the first episode. We are learning how to do this. We've each probably been on 1,000 podcasts. We've probably listened to 10,000. Yet we are rookies at this technology, which is also not lost on me, given that we work in a marketing technology creative convergence. So, all right.
I gotta say, I'm impressed with your tech abilities, though. I do have to say, you're good.
We're learning. The fact that Al is an AI that I have created through a voice app.
I know you especially love that. I know.
Yeah, I don't know. Listeners, what do you think? Send us your feedback. Should it be a British woman next time? Should Al really be Alberta from Canada? We can do all these different accents. It's actually really cool. But it's also a little bit scary. And let's talk about this in our first really deep dive, Seen and Heard.
We call this the Seen and the Heard.
Thanks, Al. So, Valerie, you and I are active on LinkedIn. We see probably dozens of posts daily, sometimes from the same person, but like tips and tricks on how to use ChatGPT. Are you using ChatGPT personally or as a marketer?
I am using it very infrequently, and I find myself not trained on thinking to go there for support. And that is one of the biggest friction points for me at this moment. I was just speaking to somebody that I was hosting a panel, and she gave me suggestions for questions. And I said, thank you so much for sending that so quickly. They're great questions. And she goes, oh my God, I just put in a sentence into Chat GPT and they gave me all of these questions.
Yeah, I found that the output is fine. It's not very creative. It can be a good foundation for ideas, but it lacks the human touch. And if you can figure out how to layer on your own humanity, I like to call AI plus HI, human intelligence, high. That is what we should be thinking about it as and for it. It sounds like you need an AI tool to remind you to use AI.
Yes, actually. I think so. Another interesting comment that was made to me by someone in the media industry was that a client has purchased some sort of or uses some sort of AI software. Forgive me because I'm it was in passing in a conversation. I'm still thinking about it. They use this software to overlay over their digital media buying, and it provided great cost benefits. And that particular DSP was found out about it, figured it out somehow because they weren't spending nearly as much. And it's something that I think is quite interesting for future.
Someone who works on more of the creative side, there's a lot of fear that it's going to put creators out of business. And I actually think it's going to be the opposite. It's going to make the creative better. I'm using it personally more on the visual side. Midjourney as a visual creative tool. Yes, they had some issues early on where you'd put something in and people would have 6 fingers, which isn't abnormal, by the way. If you have polydactyly, great. We love you as a listener. But the fact that you would have a thumb in the middle of a palm or 11 fingers wrapped around. Yeah, they worked it out. It's still not perfect, but it's getting a lot better. It's making my pitch decks slightly more manageable because you can then not listen to me and just look at the cool visuals. That's usually the secret to my pitching success. So we'll see. I think there are going to be a lot of pros and cons that we see coming out of it. Yes, people are afraid of the existential crisis of AI taking over, Terminator style. I am not worried about that. I think by the time
Nor am
that
I.
happens, you and I will be long dead and buried, which is hopefully not too soon. But this is a hype cycle. We're seeing real value out of it in the same way we saw it out of metaverse and Web3 blockchain, and we're coming out of that down dip in that hype cycle. Just
And the challenging with the hype cycle too is that like I find that people when you bring up metaverse like have such a negative or crypto or something, they have such negative connotations to it because of the level of hype that had occurred over the last couple of years. And so I really do think, the metaverse is real. It is. Gaming exists. That's a metaverse. I think
we're talking in
AI
a
is
metaverse right now, by the way. We're talking in a
we're
virtual
talking
augmented world.
correct. Exactly. And then from an AI standpoint, it's super real. And, I get that hype happens. It's just what we do. Everyone's looking for content to share and talk about. But like, I hate this idea of everything becoming negative so immediately because everyone's obsessed with it when it really is real stuff. I mean, it's real. You should be thinking about it. You shouldn't be ignoring it. You shouldn't be annoyed by it.
We could be annoyed by some of the LinkedIn posts, I think, where people who claim to be
Yes.
experts on it, but that is the hype and not the actual reality. And part of our
Right.
job as both marketers, storyteller, creators, and consumers of this technology is to quickly sift through the hype to figure out where the real value is and where it's not. In the same way that we might be a little bit ahead on Web3, blockchain, crypto, metaverse, like we're starting to see practical, functional use cases. That hype cycle around AI is happening a little bit more quickly because the practical realities of what it can be used for are really beneficial, but there's also a lot of crap that's coming with it. So
Would you have used this in high school to write a paper?
I might have done it for research, but again, my not to brag, but as a writer, I am so much better than ChatGPT. My style, like
Yeah.
I'm a writer, so
Yeah.
I think it'll give me good inspiration. But I write a biweekly newsletter plug called the Four Ps, and I've never once used ChatGPT for any of it. And
You
I'm a
should put that stipulation on your on your
well, look,
newsletter.
it would make it happen a lot quicker. I mean, I spend a couple of hours every other week writing it,
I love
but
it.
I believe that
I
my
love that.
9,832 readers appreciate my voice. And they would know if it was like, let us tell you about something that is really interesting. Like, you could sift through that bullshit very quickly. So,
I know. It's so
personality
true.
is like 9/10 of the law. I think that's an expression, right? Or did I just make that up? But,
And your newsletter is
well,
fantastic, by the
thank
way.
you. So, speaking of hype, when I am at an event or I'm at a party and we're going to
Ooh,
Cannes next week, right? Well,
I love this segue.
before we get to our guest, tell me about what you are excited about. What's happening in Cannes? Because it's real, it's happening, and it's also hyped.
Well, as you know, Outfront will have a yacht this year, so I'm thick and deep into the weeds of figuring out content and whatever happy hours. So I'm really excited about it. We have some really special content thanks to you introducing me to Michael Cohen. We're doing a great panel with him from Whistle. Those who hear this, please come to the boat and check it out. Planning for Cannes, I find that there are a ton of people going this year. So I'm actually very, very excited about it. It's going to be a good time. It's exhausting,
This is
but
the stressful week where your calendar looks like Jenga. Right? You got
ugh.
11 things happening every second, and it's really a matter of not what's going to be most interesting, but where are you closest when one thing ends. Like,
It's
you
so
know what?
true.
That thing, I'm on a yacht right now, but that thing is all the way down the beach or up on a villa. And for people listening who've never been, this sounds like the most pretentious conversation of all time. But work really does happen there, right?
I mean, the thing is, you foster some amazing relationships, and when you think about how, I don't know, since COVID, I feel like I'm more, it's really hard to get people out and about to communicate face to face. I think people have gotten very comfortable with not being out as often and socializing. So this is a really kind of great experience to just have set time with people and learn and collaborate and communicate. I don't know. There's so many people that say to me, "I'm so happy I'm not going this year," and I don't know how much I believe them.
I also just appreciate some of the good stories that come out of it, including you and I last year almost getting arrested trying to hop on a dinghy that stormed the beach to take us off in the middle of the night. Things like that, or ending up on some trillionaire's mega yacht without really any planned reason to be there. Like that spontaneity is what I love. The law of diffusion means that you can never have more than 30 people in one place at once, except for everyone trying to get into the Spotify and Amazon concerts after hours.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
well, if we don't see you on a boat, if we don't see you on a beach or in a villa, we will see you online trying to drop names at the Spotify party.
Speaking of Spotify.
Yeah, that's a great segue too. Boom, look, you pulled it together, and this is only episode 2. Our guest today is someone that I have known for many, many years, even though she pretends to not admit it. And she's someone, Valerie, that you have met somewhat more recently. But speaking of she will be there. She will be working. She will be bringing the hype in a very different way. We are talking about celebrity DJ, event DJ to the stars, but also someone who's taken on yet somewhat more of a serious set of responsibilities in her life over the last few years. And she's going to talk about it. But you know her as Hesta Prynn. I know her as Julie Slavin, and I'm excited for this conversation.
And now for the main event. Someone who actually knows what they're talking about. This week, we sit down with everyone's favorite marketing event DJ, therapist, and musician, Hesta Prynn, a.k.a. Julie Slavin.
Welcome, Julie, a.k.a. Hesta Prynn, blue chip celebrity DJ, to the marketing community, but also to the stars.
That's true. When you talk about snarketing, right? When we're talking about marketing and snarketing, it's like I have a way that I market myself, and it's not name checking. It's not name checking my age and the town I live in and what high school I went to in the first 20 seconds.
You know what? We can only control our brand to a certain extent. So let me set you up then, because yes, you and I have known each other-ish. We've danced around the same dance floor, maybe on opposite sides.
I don't know that we danced around the same dance floor. Do you know what I was doing in my 20s, Matt? I don't think you were on my
20s. We were probably at the same bar mitzvahs.
I feel like we weren't.
We can name check friends later, but why don't we just start with, I remember hearing your name through mutual friends when we were in high school.
Okay.
And looking back on it, you were probably the musical theater geek that I secretly wanted to hang out with, but thought I was too cool to hang out with. But it turns out you were just much cooler than I was in retrospect.
In what world am I the geek and you're too cool? What is happening on this podcast? I'm not even acting for the podcast. I'm literally asking you.
Matt is manifesting his 15-year-old self in the delusion by which he's...
I mean, I peaked. Let's be honest. I definitely peaked junior year of high school. It's been downhill ever since.
I don't know about that.
We need to phone some of your friends from high school to validate this.
So then let's ask this a different way. How would you position yourself, or how do you brand yourself in a marketing context? What does your brand mean, and how do you portray yourself?
So I'll start by talking about a branding technique that I use. How about that?
Well,
something that I've learned is that if I tell you something about myself, it has a meaning like here. Maybe now it has more of a meaning, but when I kind of first started out, it meant this. But if I can report to you what a third party said about me, now it counts like this. And so what I learned early on when I entered the music business is that every publication will duplicate your bio word for word, like cut and paste. So whatever you want to say about yourself, the trick is get someone else to say it about you. Por ejemplo, the beat that I'm on now is music and mental health, right? I've been a musician for a long time. I was in a major label band. I've toured with like a lot of big acts, Cypress Hill, the Beastie Boys, the Roots. I toured with Questlove or worked with Questlove for 2 years, learned how to mix vinyl from them. I have a lot of great celebrity clients. Emma Lovewell, Amy Schumer, the list goes on, Jimmy Fallon. But if I tell you that I'm the leading voice in music and mental health, it sounds like I'm kind of showing off. Just like when I just read you my resume, I was like a little bit like, it gives you like a yucky feeling of me like selling it. But if you go to my LinkedIn, you'll see that CNN actually called me the leading voice in music and mental health. So I don't have to say it because they said it. And you trust them. They already built their brand. And so I feel like when it comes to like, we're revealing the secrets, when it comes to like humble bragging a little bit, and when it comes to being like likable, I have found that people seem to like me better if I kind of play all my stuff down. But you can see on my one sheet all the wonderful things people have said about me, some of which have actually come from the horse's mouth.
I love it.
Well, there's a famous quote by Jeff Bezos who said, your brand is only what people say about you when you're not in the room. So I think there's a similar vibe there. I think the difference is what you're saying is you can actually Inception Jedi mind trick some of that and get others to say what you want them to say in a second degree that then validates it, but doesn't come off as weird or creepy or self-promotional.
Yes, but there's a second piece of that, which is called integrity. So you can get people to say what you want them to say when you're not in the room. But if you're going to have people say that you're, what people say about me, what my reputation is that I'm flawless, I'm professional, I work in service of everything that I do, not in service of myself, and that's the truth. Anyone who's worked with me knows that you can trust me around really famous people. I don't take pictures. You can trust me around, blue chip clients. I know how to speak professionally. I know how to be cool. And then of course my craft. I know the music. I can mix vinyl. I have a degree now. I'm a real therapist. I'm on the radio. I talk about therapy. Like I can tell you what I want you to say in an inception backwards kind of a way. But then when you hire me or when you listen to my radio show and I roll into the job, you can know in truth that I'm going to live up to what I secretly programmed you to say about me when I wasn't there. And that's called integrity.
Right. So it's this like natural feedback loop.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's also an awareness of the audience, right? Like as a performer, someone who's been in front of audiences your whole life, whether it's live or on the radio or wherever it is, you have to have this really key set of insights and understanding of the inputs to kind of give them what they want in a way without sacrificing that integrity.
Yeah, always. But I think like this is like a secondary thing. And I think when it comes to like your world, right? Because I work for a lot of the same sort of, people. And that's how I know you and I know each other, I guess in theory from like the past. But the reason we're, the reason I'm on your podcast is because I'm more in your world now. And me and Valerie are new best friends. But we met through, some big ballers we know at Cannes Lion.
Yeah.
And so in your worlds, I have found that like what people really want, if this is what you're asking, what people really want is they want to feel cool and they want to feel like they belong. And that means something different to everybody. It's like when I DJ a party for Spotify and it's very young and it's very edgy and it's aggressive, feeling cool is a whole different thing. And when I DJ a party for like WPP and it's all, like big executives of a certain age and it's mostly men or whatever, it's like making them feel cool and like they belong is a whole different playlist. And I think that the skill that what I bring and kind of what I'm selling, whether it's like as a therapist, whether it's as a radio person, whether it's as a DJ, is that like, I know how to make every single person feel cool. That's my real gift. I know how to make you feel cool and like you belong. And it's a choice. Do I want to enact that? Yes, of course. Do I want to make it about me and make you feel excluded, which a lot of DJs and creatives and writers and marketers and people who sell things, they make you feel bad because they think it's going to help you buy something. Maybe that's true, but I don't buy that. That's not my brand. I want to make you feel cool. When you come talk to me, I want you to feel like your coolest, best self. And I use music as a tool to do that.
Yeah, I mean, music is such a connection point we can get into this conversation for hours, and which you do. So tell us a little bit about your show, just like how it started, like how it's going, what your plans are with it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I like it. How it started, how it's going. It's like the meme. Yeah, I'm like how it started, and I'm like how it's going. But I'm just joking. So so I've been in music for my whole life, but they used to call me, when I was in the band Northern State, they used to call me Hesta Prynn PhD, because I was like everybody's therapist. That was like there's a lot of rhymes actually in the Northern State like canon about that, Hesta Prynn PhD. And so I always wanted to really learn like family systems and really learn, why people lie and how people make promises to themselves and to others, how to have integrity, how to make your dreams come true, how to like manifest real things, but from the psychology perspective, let's say. Because to me, music and mental health, they're the same thing. I heard Pitbull say on Howard Stern, I was listening to the repeat this morning, and he said, music is an escape, music is therapy. And I was like, oh, I got to record that because that's the name of my show. So that was like my sort of secondary goal when I got tired of like DJing these parties, which I haven't yet, but I would like to eventually one day like leave something here. And DJing parties and getting paid and doing all the fun things and all that, like it's great, but it's not really a legacy. And so I'm trying to build a legacy. And so I call it Music is Therapy. I was on Sirius XM. I was going to do it there, but I sold it to Amazon. They have a new live radio app called AMP, which is awesome. It's live radio, but on the phone, people call in and we can play music, and it's really interactive and super fun and very community based. And so I'm building this Music is Therapy community on air where I'm practicing this technique. It's like I'm creating a new technique of therapy, the way we have like Freudian, therapy, and like Jungian and family systems. Yeah, mine is called Music is Therapy, and it's essentially like, how do we look at your hauntings from your life? How do we look at your issues that you have, which we all have? Our parents programmed it into us, our grandparents programmed it into us. How can, the same way you smell something and it brings you right back to that memory, music is the same. But instead of just sitting in that space, can we use music to heal it? And this is the technique that I'm developing. And that's what I want to leave into the world. And so this is like a second half of my life project. It's like when you say, where do I want to go? It's a book, it's a training, it's a technique. It's people can get certified in it. It's a very accessible way that people can improve their lives, because traditional therapy is, for most people, not accessible. It's expensive. It's hard to come by. There's stigma around it. But everybody has their entire record collection. And now with streaming services, you have every song that ever existed at your fingertips. And these are like very powerful therapeutic tools. And I want to teach people how to use them to heal their lives.
So like for people who don't have like a huge understanding of music and different styles and stuff, like what do you say about for those people? I mean, because for me, like I've been in a music world and married to a music person, like it's like my everything. I think I married him because he would put on the best playlists possible for every setting in my life, like sitting at my home. So like I understand the value of that. But what do you say to those people that?
My first like really big client that was loyal to me for like 8 years was Spotify. And their very first marketing line when I was working with them was music for every moment. And we had this big party, and they had a Vampire Weekend, Janelle Monáe, and Frank Ocean in the same room, a small room, like 100. And this is 2013 or 2012 maybe, when they first came to New York. And I was recommended to them by the guys who booked Bonnaroo, because I had done this like vinyl set. I was really underqualified for this job, to be honest with you. But I got this job, and they were like, we need someone who knows enough genres who can put these artists together. And so I thought, what would Questlove do? Which I still think sometimes, but then I thought it all the time. And so I told all these musical stories, and they were like, we love you. Let's do this all over the world. And it was great. But to answer your question about what do you do if you have to be like the person with the best musical taste? What do you do if you don't know all the songs? In a way, I think it's almost, this ties back to this idea of inclusivity and making everyone feel cool. And I think in a way, if you are not like a music head or a person who knows like tons of songs, this is even easier. Because if your knowledge is smaller, if I say to you, what's a song that reminds me of your parents riding in the back of your parents' car, for those of us who grew up on Long Island, or what's a song that reminds you of your hometown, or what was the song that reminded you of this friendship and what happened to it, or what happens when I play you Madonna Borderline, what do you feel? It's like we can go, for someone who doesn't have this deep, crazy musical thing, it's easier because you can just go right to the hits. Like you can just go to like, what was on the radio in 1986? Play it. What
And
happens?
it can trigger those moments that feel more than the audio. It's visual, it's sensual, it's everything that you've ever experienced. It's all the senses. And that, I mean, I think it is extremely powerful. Knowing what that is for every individual, it kind of doesn't matter. I have a friend who, I've been out with her and we're dancing and she doesn't know the words to the song, but she's like mouthing
Yeah.
things that aren't even the real words, but she is lost in a moment. And it's funny to watch and it's funny to talk about. But in some ways, I'm kind of jealous because I'm kind of like trying to get the words right and make sure that I hit the cadence. Like I'm performing for other people, like lip syncing is a thing still.
Yeah, it is. Oh my God. Brad, hello.
Well, I know there are TV shows with lip sync battles still, but yeah, I think there is something to be said about bringing those moments. It's the story of our lives. Music is the story of our lives, right?
Absolutely. For everything that happens to you, it's like, where did you get married? What was your wedding song? Whether you're like the deepest person into music or the not, or 6 things. And like, I think there's also, I'm very good and very knowledgeable at like 2 things, maybe 3, maybe really just 1. But there's so many things that I know nothing about. So something that Matt knows a lot about that I know literally 0 about is sports. I don't know shit about sports. But when I'm invited to like professional, besides WWE, which I love, when I'm invited to
That's sports entertainment for the record. They're very clear in their branding. Yes.
That's drag. That is drag. But when I'm invited, it is. When I'm invited to a like professional sports game, sports ball game,
Match.
I always go because it's really fun and it's exciting and I can like take it in an experiential way because I have no like sort of expectations or knowledge, and it gives you a minute to have that like beginner's luck type of experience.
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
not I wasn't raised with any music. If you ask my mother what her favorite song is, she wouldn't be able to come up with one. That's real talk. And so it's interesting if you're not like married to music as part of your identity in that way. I think that there's like a freeing way to do this work from a beginner's headspace that will be just as effective. Does that make sense?
So if your parents weren't,
I'm not really sure. We got to figure that one out.
I mean, if we want to turn the tables from a therapy perspective, if your parents weren't giving you the gift of music at an early age, how did you discover it? What brought you into it? Like, were there mentors, guides? Was it just like your friends in the basement?
No, my first musical memory ever is watching, do you remember Tom and Jerry?
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
There was like instrumental, like when they raced and stuff.
There was. I watched a lot of cartoons growing up, like a lot. I watched a lot of television growing up.
Inspector Gadget.
I didn't really, I have seen it. But I watched a lot of like Hanna-Barbera cartoons. That was like my shit. And so I watched a lot of Tom and Jerry, and there was classical, and it's funny because I remember one piece, and I know now the piece is Rhapsody in Blue because I heard it in many years later, and I was like, oh, that's that thing. But I remember this like it was yesterday, and I was younger than 5 because we lived in the place where we lived before I was 5, and I remember watching Tom and Jerry, and I get chills talking about this, and hearing Rhapsody in Blue, which is a very like evocative song. And thinking, like, I remember thinking this in my like 4-year-old's head, where is that happening? Like, I was like, I'm looking at the mouse and the cat chasing each other, but like the song, like, where's the song happening? And I had that thought somehow, this like organic thought. And for years as a kid, that was what I was curious about. I was like, but what is that? And where does that happen? And that was kind of like the first question that I asked that sent me on this, like, I was so curious about it. And then it opens up like a whole world. And then there's 100 stories after that. But that was the first one.
And like music at the time, like you had radio. I feel like now we're aging ourselves, but like, you don't have
there's music
the
on
access.
TV also, right? I mean,
there was music on TV.
It's interesting. You bring up Rhapsody in Blue. My memories of that song are actually the United Airlines marketing music. That was for 30 years. The song underlying every ad they had on the radio and TV, as well as when you get on the plane, there's the original music.
Yeah.
I think of travel, I think of vacations with my family. So the fact that marketing and advertising did that to me with that same song is fascinating and triggers different yet similar types of
That's
moments in
wild.
our lives. Is that Gershwin? Who's Rhapsody in Blues?
Yes,
Gershwin?
Gershwin. And you know what's
So
amazing about that is, see, this to me, this is like, I get chills from this. This is what I do all day. This is what I want. This is like when I think of like the journey I'm on in this lifetime, this is the one. Because everywhere I go, like all day in my experience as a human, this human experience I'm having, right? This is the conversation. What is the first musical memory, whatever, and I tell you what that was for me and how it changed my life. A piece of music written by George Gershwin, and now here on a podcast called Snarketing, the same piece of music. Matt says that for me was this and this, and it came from
Family vacations.
yes,
Yeah.
but it came from this marketing perspective. And now here I am, a lifetime in marketing, and here I am, a lifetime in music. And the same song, you could argue, the same song, having an experience at the same age, because we're the same age, with the same song, changed the trajectory of our lives. We heard it in different contexts and followed it. Isn't that something that I'm on here and it's not like, oh, what was the name of that song? I'll have to Google that later. You're like, no, that song to me meant marketing and became blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's always like this. It's the only thing.
well, the snarketing side of me thinks, well, how much did they pay to get that product, that musical placement for United Airlines, and how much royalty does Gershwin estate get for all that? But that's a story for another time, because really, at the end of the day, the marketing, audience, evocative nature of what we're talking about, it's still the undercurrent for everything that happens as far as just music, memories, moments.
So you were talking about earlier, I don't think we were recording, about like setting a legacy for yourself, and like while what you're doing today is all and well, but like what you're building upon is really for this future version of yourself, and what you will determine as your legacy, ultimately. And like I actually reposted on LinkedIn this thing that I saw from Kobe Bryant, who actually is behind me because I'm in my son's room. And
do you know who that
he,
is, Julie? You know Kobe Bryant, basketball player.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, you're
sure.
aware. Yeah, great, good. So, and it was something around like, what does greatness mean to you? And it was basically like, wordsmithing it is, it's about inspiring others.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like what his legacy was. It's like, I just want to be able to share my story and give people an opportunity to feel inspired by that, to become great too. And then, that's what life is about, and meeting humans that can kind of have that effect. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I feel like that's how you feel.
Yeah, that's really inspiring, actually. I think for me, it's about like, what I'm interested in is consciousness, truthfully. And I don't want to get too like, Kabbalistic and metaphysical on your show, but we're having a real conversation, and that's who I really am. So I'm interested in consciousness, like the ROI. Is that what you're asking me? I think is consciousness. Look at the world we live in. There are shootings in the school every day. Okay, we are having like a crisis of connection. People are suffering and they are hurting so badly. It's not great. It's bad. Like, shit is real and it's not good. It's bad. And I believe that, like, when we talk about health, right? What I'm talking about when I say health or mental health is really consciousness. And consciousness means not being reactive, not living on autopilot, playing out the same patterns from your parents and your grandparents, whatever. And now we're all on our phones all the time. So it's like we don't even have the regulation that we get from each other. We're just spinning in our own patterns, and myself too. We're just spinning our wheels like a stationary bike in the same fucking bad bullshit that has been passed down to us. And we have to get off the bike. And getting off the bike means waking up and becoming conscious and making choices about your actions and having the reality, like the reality check of like, what it means to be alive in this moment. It's like the fact that the three of us are here alive at the same time and that we listened to the same song growing up, it's statistically impossible. It's statistically impossible that the three of us are even alive at the same moment, isn't it? So when you even say that, suddenly you get off that bike, you're like, whoa, you come to presence and you come to some kind of a consciousness. And I want to live that way all the time. That's my dream. And I want to help other people live that way, because I think when you behave in a conscious way, you don't do things that make the world worse. I think if we had more consciousness, we would have a better world. We all have kids, right? We have 4 children between us. And I don't want to feel afraid. Like at the end of my life, I don't want to feel afraid. I want to feel hopeful.
It's true. It's true.
You and I had a conversation maybe a month or two ago as I was considering a career change. And I've thought a lot about that conversation. It inspired me. It gave me some parameters to gauge opportunity against pros, cons, but really taking a step back and thinking like, what should I be doing with my life? What am I good at? What makes me happy? What can I make some money doing? Right? That was incredibly inspiring and helpful. You are a gift unto us, but are there people who have inspired you or who have given you those types of frameworks? Because you speak from a place not only of knowledge, but also of passion and purpose. Where does that come from?
Well, I'm really glad that conversation was helpful for you. And it makes me feel good because I don't really totally remember exactly what I must have said in that, but I feel
it inspired me to start this podcast, and here we are. It's perfect. No,
I didn't. That's great. It makes me feel like I'm walking the walk, right? So who inspires me? You know, like I have done, like there are practices that inspire me, like Jewish mysticism, real talk. Like Kabbalah inspires me in a very serious way. And I don't talk about it a lot because it's controversial in a lot of different ways. But there are teachings from certain practices. You could look at someone like Neville Goddard, like these people who talk about, metaphysics, and it's thinking about the world and thinking about our human experience in a different way than I was raised. I was raised with this idea of reality. Well, it's reality. You have to get a job. That's reality. And I was like, no, I'm going to get a big record deal. And my favorite band on earth is the Beastie Boys. And all I ever wanted was to be a Beastie Boy. And then I got to work with and be friends with a Beastie Boy. How did that happen? Because I didn't make a backup plan, because I just went for it. And then when I got older, I learned that there are some practices that give you tools to do this kind of thing. It's like, it's not an accident. People who inspire me, RuPaul inspires me beyond, I could cry talking about this. I can't put a measurement to how RuPaul inspires me. RuPaul is a human being whose mother said, when she was pregnant, I'm going to name him RuPaul Andre Charles, and he's going to be a motherfucking star. And look what happened. And so
manifesting through the belly.
Totally. And just like someone who just really celebrates who they are as like a true original. Like, this is who RuPaul is, and now has built in our world, in the world of here, in this matrix, like a $1 zillion gigantic empire, and has helped the world, and has opened minds, and I can have conversations with other people's children because RuPaul has given me the tools, not just the types of conversations we have in my house. And that inspires me. Like I wish, I would have dreamed that I could have that type of impact. There's artists that I love. Joseph Albers is a Bauhaus painter who painted. Do you know Joseph Albers? Homage to the square. So I've been looking at. I'll tell you like one woo-woo story. Do you want to hear this? Is this like?
Yeah.
So when I was 19, I went to London. And it was, I think, the first time I was really out of the country. And I moved to London because I was very interested in this type of kind of like indie rock that was coming out of the UK. And when I got there, all anybody listened to was garage music, which I fucking love, which is like 90s dance music, British 90s dance music. And I'll send you some. You'll love it. It's the best. I'm sure like your husband and you will know all about it, but I'll send you some stuff. So people were listening to garage music, and I was like, I discovered, like, I got my life on the dance floor. You know, that expression means you get your life. I got my life I had like spiritual experiences listening to this music in this foreign country. Like the first time I made a big choice, the first time I really felt like myself. And I went to the Tate Modern one day because I love to go to a museum to get inspiration. And on the wall, I saw this piece, and it was one of the pieces from the series Homage to the Square that Joseph Albers had painted. Now, he painted, we don't know, but several hundred or low thousands of the same thing. It's square. The reason he painted them this way is because he felt that art should be kind of like for everybody living its own life. Meaning that this isn't Edward Munch, whatever, the Scream. It's
The
here,
Scream.
not the Mona Lisa. You got to go to the Louvre and see it. It's, I made this piece and they're out in the world and they can never be in the same place. So whenever they do an Albers retrospective, they did one at the Guggenheim a few years ago. They had like 20 of them. And that was amazing. But there's so many of them and you don't know where they are. So I bought a print, right? I bought a print, which probably cost like 200 pounds. I didn't have any money. And I brought it home and I framed it. It's in my house. It was a print. And so that became a thing for me, that I loved this piece and I discovered this music and I discovered this art at a time in my life when I made a choice to move out of the country. And so then I traveled for, 15 years or 10 years in the band. And now I travel as a DJ, and wherever I go, when I would have like a day off, I would search to see if there was an Albers anywhere. And there always is one here, one there. And I would make
Amazing.
a day. So I'm in Spain. There's two Albers here. Fine. I'm going to spend the day doing whatever, making my way to see the Albers. And when I see the Albers, I feel connected to myself. But Joseph Albers inspires me because he created all these pieces. And then he took them like the way you'd put a sand in your hand and go, and we'll never know how many there are. We'll never have seen them all. And he didn't leave records of how many he made. And I love them. And that's,
I love that.
Yes. And that's what like the work of, music and art really is that you can't trace it. You can't have an ROI. And that's why this is such an interesting conversation, is like, what's the ROI on art how can you measure it?
I think it's a great lesson or just takeaway for those of us who are so, I think I'm a left brain and right brain, but there are people in the marketing industry who work more broadly in business, who every action needs to have some sort of degree of KPI or measurability, and that guides everything, right? If we don't know what the inputs are, how do we know what the output should be? Or vice versa, how do we know if the outputs were successful in moving the needle and converting some sort of change? And maybe it doesn't matter as much as we think it does, because the inspiration that we draw from anything that we see or anything we hear or anything that we feel is in many ways immeasurable.
Yes.
So as you're meeting and you are traveling the world at different events or meeting marketers or brought in to make the party fun.
Yeah.
Do you think do you look out and say, these are people who are creating art? Do you think about it that way? Or are you thinking about this as just another audience that you want to make sure is having a good time?
Do I think about marketers as people who are creating art?
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, I think marketing is part art, part science. We need to leverage an understanding of the audience to give them something that makes them feel, makes them take an action, and without some sort of sense for what motivates and guides them and what inspires them, those actions will not have the equal or opposite reaction that marketers intend. So you look at creative directors. I know your husband, right? He's trying to create art for a purpose. So it's not entirely driven by the idea of art in and of itself, but art as a tool, art as a vehicle for creating an outcome, inspiring something, I think is still powerful.
I was just watching, James Corden did a remake of Cindy Crawford and the Pepsi, kicking the vending machine and trying to get, and he was coming out of the car instead of her, and it was ridiculous. But for those that grew up seeing that commercial like years ago, like again, it leaves an imprint in your mind similar to like music or whatever. And so those are marketers, those are creatives creating that. So like there's certainly art in that. And I think there's been some really amazing stuff done from that capacity that just was top of mind.
I guess when I see the folks or whatever, like I wouldn't play different. If I was playing for like a room of like artsy fartsy people versus a room of corporate people, these are just folks in costumes, and they're just different costumes. Costumes. You're not more of a this if you're this, or more of a that if you're that. They're just different costumes, and the thing is, you can change. It's like I'm in a t-shirt and some necklaces today, so I look a certain kind of way, and this is my most and leather pants. This is my most comfortable uniform. But if I had rolled into this meeting in like a suit, I would be giving a different energy. And if I'd rolled in like a push-up bra, I'd be giving a different energy.
But that's what makes marketing, I think, interesting as an art, in the same way that when you're in Cannes and I'm wearing my pink pants and, lime green shirt on the beach, I'm in a costume, but I'm fitting into an environment. I'm still me, but the vibe can be somewhat set by you and others creating this atmosphere. And I want to both contribute to it, but also take something out of it. And I think that's where you and what you do and what marketers and advertisers do is we're both creating something for others to engage and react to, but also we want something in return. What do you want in return? When you're looking out at the crowd, you want to see people smiling, jumping, dancing, singing along, right? Like you want something out of that? You get something, you feel something out of that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, yes, of course. But it's like different things come out of different projects. So, for you guys, I'm sure it's exactly the same way. And it's like, sometimes you do things that are really cool that pay you really low. And sometimes you do things that pay you a lot of money that aren't as like, don't turn you on as much or whatever. And I always keep my eye on the money because I have to, and I want to. And doing things that are higher paying fund the things that are lower paying, I guess. I don't know. I guess I wish I had thought about it. I think the reason that I'm getting tripped up on this, or I don't have an answer for you, is because I think it's an insecurity of mine that I am such like an artist in my heart in the way that I do things. And when I go to a place like Cannes and I look around and I'm like, I feel like I should be like, who are all these folks and like what can they do for me, and I should meet with this one. I worked for Spotify for 8 years. I traveled all over the world with them. They were like, don't you want to work here? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, no, let's just do the gigs. And I opened for Tony Bennett and Kendrick Lamar and the Foo Fighters and everyone that they worked with, I opened for. And then when they had an IPO and all my friends like made a ton of money, I was like, why didn't I do that? That was really foolish. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And yet when I go to Cannes and I look into the audience and everyone's like the big ballers and whatever, all I think about is like, how old are they? Where are they from? And like, because that helps me figure out what to play and what's going to make them feel cool. Like they all feel a little stiff. They all feel a little like douchey. Like they don't like that part of this, but there's a part of this that's amazing, which is that you're in the south of France on a yacht. I wasn't raised that way. Look how lucky we are. Look how lucky we are. And so that's the energy I try to bring musically of like, this is beautiful. We are so lucky, like waking them up a little consciousness. And so I get lost in that. And I don't play like the game in the right way as far as networking, like the way it works here. But what has happened in my career is that there's often like a really important person, like a CEO. That's why I have so many good contacts, who doesn't maybe want to talk about business. And I gave that guy his life a little bit musically, and he wants to come over and talk to me.
That's art, and that's a little bit of science, right? You figured out what works for you, and you are optimizing against that. So before we wrap up, let us both, Valerie and I, say thank you for joining us, for challenging us, for inspiring us, for making us a little bit healthier.
I love this hippie version of you. This is lovely.
I know. Sometimes when I get
well, so let's see how she does though under pressure, because hippies
this
are
is like
usually
my
great.
most real, like this is my most real self. But I don't know if it's marketing enough, because part of me is like, maybe you guys could help me if I can market this shit.
Again, part of this is art, part of this is science, and finding that blend, being either consistent to find your niche by having one topic that you talk about all the time, and that grows an audience, or having a more diverse set of content and topics that you address? Like, there's different ways to do it, but really, I think if there's one thing Valerie and I have learned is that growing an audience requires a combination of content, context,
Consistent.
and consistency. Yes. And then a little bit of paid boosting helps always.
This is Gone in 60 Seconds.
We are going to wrap up now with our Gone in 60 Seconds outro,
Woo!
right? This is how we close the party down. It can either be a success or it can be a failure, but people always remember the last song. So put 60 seconds on the clock, Val. Thank you. I see that you've done that. We are going to get going with the first question. What is your favorite marketing industry event of the year?
Ken Lyon.
What is the most successful hair color you've ever rocked?
This one. Well, it's Hesta Prynn, like the Scarlet Letter, you know? So it's like, it's bright red.
Do you find people who drive in the car without music on psychotic?
No, because I do it a lot to rest my ears.
You've heard of FMK, Fuck, Marry, Kill. We are going to create a variation of that, which is collab, tour, or drop, meaning you want to collaborate with them, you would want to tour with them, or you just want to totally just drop them.
Okay.
Harry Styles, Taylor
Girl.
Swift, Beyonce. Tour, collab, drop.
This is so easy. It's comical. Let's get the F back in there, and that would be Harry Styles. Or would be Taylor Swift. And I'm not trying to drop Beyonce, but like, you know, I don't want to stand in a picture next to Beyonce. So I'm gonna step out of that frame.
Okay.
Right.
If there is one song, when you look out and you see that the crowd is fading, or you need to cue up one banger that's guaranteed to get everyone back in the center of the dance floor, what's your go-to?
There are certain songs that have like a built-in trick. Okay, this is a DJ trick, because before we had technology to help DJ, we had to put the vinyl on the turntable, and you needed a second to cue things up so they would match. And so there's a little producer named Puffy who used to say, make the intro quieter than the rest of the song. Because what happens is the DJ puts the vinyl on the turntable and is listening for that intro to beat match, and turns it up. And then when the song comes in, it makes the room shake. Now here's some examples. Hypnotize. Think about the beginning of Hypnotize. Feels So Good with Mace. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
We're not even listening to it, and we're doing it. So on the dance floor, when I see that we are at like a 75, I don't try to like turn it up like this. What I do is I let it drop by giving you like a silent intro to something. And then everyone gets confused because they're like, wait a minute, what's happening? Like, we were just getting this thing started. And I make them think that like we're kind of dying. And then I hit them hard with something, and then they explode. You gotta use those tricks wisely, because if you use them poorly, like they flop. Sorry, that's not a lightning round answer.
Okay, last question before we let you go.
I was gonna say, what's your favorite have a good cry song?
Oh, you know what makes me cry? I don't like to have a good cry, which is too bad.
Neither do I.
But I don't like it. But I'll do it from time to time. But you know what song always makes me cry, which I don't even listen to? I never listen to Joni Mitchell, because I find it like too much. But if I listen to Both Sides Now, that makes me cry. But you know what else makes me cry? I went to see & Juliet with my kid and another mom and another kid. And Juliet is the Broadway show with Max Martin's music.
Oh, I don't know that.
It's not for you guys. It's for like you aged out of the demo. You know what I mean, with your kid. but
that happened for me in everything 20 years ago, by the way.
Yeah. When I hear like anything that's performer-y or like show tunesy, it always makes me cry. It doesn't have to be.
Oh my God, do you get that
magical feeling like when you walk into a theater, like, oh, this makes me cry. That feeling when you like walk into a theater and like the lights haven't gone down yet, but everyone's like waiting. And then, oh my God, I have chills all over my body. And then the lights go down and it's like something is about to happen. It's like, that makes me feel like like a kid immediately. And that makes me cry. Like when the lights go down in a theater, I cry.
Starts in my throat. Like I get the choked up feeling, and then it's like,
It's amazing.
Yeah, I know exactly.
That moment, like honestly, makes me feel like, or like I DJ'd an event at Town Hall on Monday for Emma Lovewell, her book release, which was awesome. And we did a lot of, it was very theatrical, a lot of pieces. And the Peloton people are very musical theatery, and they're so cute. Cody Rigsby and her and me did this whole thing. It was really fun. And we rehearsed it in the wings and all this stuff. And we had to be off the stage because the stage goes dark because it's a union room. So you can't walk on the stage for an hour before the show. And so we're in Town Hall with all the seats and we're waiting. I was DJing and we were waiting for the people to come in, and they turned the lights down, and I was working, and I started to become overcome, and I felt this and I allowed this spontaneous thought to just be I feel so grateful to be alive. And I was this feeling of you know what I mean? Just this magic, it feels separate from the money and the work and all the things I worry about. And just this moment of we're all here to watch a performance. And I can't believe I get to be part of this. It was all I ever wanted. And that was not a big money job. It was but I can't believe I get to do this. This is all my only dream. It's I sat in the audience and looked at the stage and was how do I get there? And I don't even do anything. I don't really play. I'm not a great musician. I'm not a great singer. I'm not a great fucking actress, even though I have a BFA from Tisch. I was not that great. I just wanted to be there. I found a way to do it, just being myself. And that's, I guess, maybe the lesson. And maybe that's probably what I talked to you about when we were talking about your job. Just where do you want to, how can you find a way to get where you want to get just by being you? Can you turn the noise about all the other shit down to just be I want to be there? And then
I know, because that's when you're your best version of yourself
that's when
too.
You're just in a place of true of just love, and it's totally contagious. It's so.
How do we create more of those moments? That's what I think we should all be striving for, and enjoy them while we're in them.
We created so many in this hour, and I can't believe I've been on with you guys this long, but it's fun, and it's that's what we did here.
We made memories.
Wow, that was certainly memorable. Thanks to Julie, and thanks to everyone for listening. Matt and Valerie are already off to their next meetings, but let us know what you thought, and if you know of a snarky marketer to be on a future episode. See you next time on the Snarketing Podcast.